Jeremy Shulman has built the Eastern Florida State College men's basketball program into a national power, reaching the Elite Eight of the NJCAA National Championship Tournament in 5 of the past 7 seasons. In 12 seasons, Shulman has posted over 275 wins and been to the National Championship Tournament 5 times, finishing second in 2016-17 and third in 2017-18. Shulman has been as Conference Coach of the Year 8 times, and the Titans have won their conference title 9 straight years. Coach Shulman, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chris, I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, this is going to be fun. Known about you for a while, great success, and, definitely a unique place to coach in the JUCO game in general. And, I got to think there's a lot of things, but give us some ideas. I know roster turnover has got to be a challenge. What are some of the other challenges?
I don't know if we have enough time on this podcast.
Of course.
All the challenges right now, but, at least to me, one of the biggest challenges is all the roster turnover. The fact that, of course, at the junior college level, we get guys for at most 2 years, sometimes only 1 year if they're a qualifier. So, it's constantly changing who we're bringing in, and especially the way we do things in our program. Everyone talks about culture, but we really live our culture. And the most difficult thing for me is we develop relationships. And, I develop relationships with our guys, see them blossom, see them bloom. And then, before you know it, they're out of the program already, moving on to a Division I program. And, it is difficult, but it's fun. It's fun, with the challenge of having a new group every single year, and that kind of goes into what we run on offense, a little bit on defense, but especially on offense each year too. Just try to adjust to who we bring in, but it's we're always signing about 10, 11 new guys every single year, so it's definitely it's definitely unique.
And it was the same at my college. Like, I knew that all the players I was getting, none of them, it was their first choice, right? And that's the challenge for you too, that none of them in theory want to be there or stay there, which is, again, amazing that you've got to bring them into this culture and commit and buy in, because winning will lead to more opportunities for them, won't it?
Absolutely. And that is a difficult thing. And it's kind of a little counterintuitive, but we actually try to recruit guys that want to be here. So how do you recruit guys that want to be somewhere where they don't want to be? And that is difficult, because every kid we recruit, their dream is to play Division I basketball. They want to play D1. So this is the fallback, going the junior college route, even though it's an amazing route. The coaches, the talent, the players at this level. Chris, it's absolutely incredible, but it is still the fallback plan for a lot of kids. And so trying to find out who truly values Eastern Florida as much as I do, who values this level, values the player development we do, values the opportunity to win and win championships, and value everything we have, not just utilizing Eastern Florida as a stepping stone for the next level. It's a challenge. And I will say this, our best teams are full of guys that truly value where they are and not where their feet are going to be in the future.
Well, and I'm glad you highlighted that they eventually they do want to be there, because they obviously want to move to their next level and get their dreams, but it takes some time for them sometimes to realize that, accept that, whatever it may be. And that's another challenge, isn't it? That a lot of your recruitment is more of a late recruitment rather than an early recruitment. And I face the same challenges at my school for those same reasons.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And, how do you predict buy-in? It's difficult. And actually, obviously, I'm sure you've gone through all that yourself. You can do all the vetting possible. You can talk to all the people around the player. But at the end of the day, you don't truly know someone's buying until they're actually there when things aren't going great. As you know, everyone's great when things are going great. When you're up 30 in a game, when your girlfriend likes you, when you're making shots, everyone loves you at that point. But where is your true buying in? Where is your character? Where are you when things are difficult? And so, that we try to do the best job we can to try to vet guys before we bring them in. But at the end of the day, you don't know till you're going through the war.
Absolutely. And talk to me, you mentioned relationships and the importance of building relationships and, managing expectations and providing coping strategies for your players, because again, we know that they want to do the best they can so that they can up level to whatever that next level is. So can you talk about some of the things that within those relationships, how you keep them grounded in perspective when they're struggling or when they're succeeding, to be able to help them get to their next level?
It's a daily battle, and I'm going to sound like that old guy on the, get off my lawn, but it's getting tougher with social media and the way the just culture in general is going, especially here in the States. But it is honestly a daily battle, and we just try to preach being in the present. We do some meditation with our team. We do tons of individual meetings. My office is always open. Guys come by the office all the time. And so I'm kind of their unofficial, counselor as well. And, we just talk about, we talk about not comparing, because we do believe that comparison is the thief of joy. We do talk about being where your feet are, trying to just live each day to its fullest and being in the present. And those are difficult things. And honestly, that's why I'm a huge, Giannis Antetokounmpo fan. When you hear Giannis speak, during the playoffs last year and after the championship, and he talks about how daily he works towards being, more mindful in the present and to be more in the present and get the most out of every day. It's such a role model for me, in addition to all my coaching role models. But we try to, we try to help our guys with that daily. And that's a hard thing to do, not just as a basketball player, as a young guy, but as a human being. It's very hard not to reminisce too much on the past, or be apprehensive of or looking forward to too much on what's going on in the future. And so that's a huge goal in what we're trying to do on a daily strategy.
That's great stuff, especially that part about comparison. That's got to be so important in that context. And you mentioned individual meetings, and that's something we want to talk about a little bit, because for most coaches, they are at or near the end of their seasons. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done, because we just talked about this last week privately, that you're in these end of year meetings. So first of all, talk to me. Every player has an end of year meeting. What is basically the logistics of that, how that happens for that player?
Absolutely. The first thing I want to make sure I say is something I learned halfway through my head coaching career is the most important thing about the end of the year meetings are having enough meetings and face-to-face time with guys throughout the year. It just changes the entire dynamic. If as a coach, you're waiting only until the end of the year to have these real, these existential sit-down meetings, you failed as a coach, honestly. And I learned it the hard way. We were winning games, and I lost a little bit of sight back about 7-8 years ago of just how important developing relationships, going to the guys' apartments, going to their dorms, just hanging out with them in the locker room, spending extra time in addition to meetings in the office. And I lost sight of that. Chris, I'll be the first one to admit it. We were winning a ton of games, but I felt like I was failing on my first goal. My first goal, and I tell every player the same thing, but my first goal when we start a year is to have the best relationship with all 18 of our guys, including every single walk-on, not just our best players, not just our starters, but everybody. And honestly, I fell short of that 7-8 years ago. And I'd always been really good at that. And, you just lose your way sometimes in winning and, trying not to lose games. And so I did have to preface everything with that. But going into the end of year meetings, I think I think guys can be really candid with you if you have built that relationship throughout. And one thing we've been really blessed about in my 12 years here, we've only had one player decide on his own to transfer out. And especially in the day and age now where everyone wants to transfer, everyone wants to leave, I think that's a testament to who we are here, the culture we've brought about, et cetera. We've had some guys transfer out that were not their decision, some guys that didn't do maybe academically or some stuff off the floor that they needed to do. But we've built a good enough culture. We've got one guy, I still remember the guy was in 2016, 17 after that season. And he was right on the fence, even with us, what was going to be best for him. But, we did offer him a spot back, and he probably wisely for him chose a different spot and became an All-American at a different spot. But, it kind of goes back into the relationship stuff. But if you have that, you can come to these meetings really candid. And, Chris, again, we talked about it some before, but there's really kind of 5 things that we hit on, in our meetings. And, we want
to talk about those individually.
Okay.
So let's get into those things individually. But maybe first, we've all lost our way as a coach in some context, and especially when it comes to relationships, because I imagine, what we all know is it takes a lot of energy, and especially in a coach in your role where you do more than just one thing. You're doing everything. There's not a ton of support. There's not a ton of money. You have to do it all. You have to raise it. You have to deal with the alum. You have to do it all yourself. You're not outsourcing any of that. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I'm a big believer in whatever is important to you as a human being is what you're going to do. Like if you love to go work out and take care of your body, you're going to go work out and take care of your body. If you don't truly like doing that, then guess what? You're going to sit on the couch and watch TV instead. So it became what's important. And it had always been in my past what's important to make time no matter what else was in my life, no matter what else was going on in my job, to make time. And I had lost sight of how important it really was to develop those relationships. And so it was more of a realization for me than anything else. And for some coaches out there that it's not the most important thing for them, it's not an easy adjustment, but I would definitely recommend that everyone kind of looks themselves in the mirror just like I did and realize that it's never about pointing fingers. It's never about blaming the kids. It's not about blaming anyone else. Man, that man in the mirror is the one that's got the issues. And that's what I had to do. And that's a hard thing to do. And it's a hard thing to do for anybody, but it's a hard thing to do. At that point, I was in my mid-30s, had success, had conference coach of the year awards at that point, had a couple of conference championships. And so it's very easy to lose, to not be able to look at yourself in the mirror and not be able to evaluate yourself. And man, I knew exactly what the blame fell on that.
Well, yeah, your success has been amazing. And in this transient nature, you talked about already the program and all the different things that go with it. And let's get then into this end of year meeting. You talked about 5 different things. Let's start with the first one.
Okay. The first one, we always talk about academics first. That's the reason our guys are here. Obviously, if I was coaching at Duke or Kentucky, maybe that's not the first reason they're here for. But, at our level, I'm a huge believer in what a college degree means and how it can change a lot of our guys' lives. And a lot of our guys would not have an opportunity to be in college if it wasn't for athletics. And so we make sure that they understand that this is still, it's still just, it's just the stepping stone for the rest of their life. I was talking about basketball. Even our guys that go on to play professional, we have literally 22 guys right now playing professional basketball that played for me. But at the end of the day, those careers are done in 5 years on average, and they've got to have something to fall back on, something to make money, something to support their family. So it comes with the degree part, it comes with the academics. And so we talk about the academics, which we have meetings a lot about that anyways, but I want to make sure the guys understand with a month and a half left in the school year exactly where they're at, where they need to be. Are there any issues? Are there any extra help with the tutors we need to? Is there anything else I can do, et cetera? So I never want that going by the wayside or even just being put as a third or fourth option. Our guys have to know that if they're not getting it done academically, they're letting everybody down at that point. So that's always the first thing, Chris.
Great stuff with the academics. And so have you found anything that helping with the academics and managing the academics, and particularly maybe, whether it's some actual stuff like study hall or different things that you found that really work for you in your program?
Absolutely. And I learned this from my former boss, Mark White, who's just incredible. And it's all about the structure and discipline first. In addition to that is, putting together study halls 4 days a week. We have school 4 days a week, not 5 days, or else we'd be doing 5 days a week study hall. But having class checks every single day, making sure guys are in class, having discipline if they don't show up where they need to be, making our guys sit in the front 2 rows of class, not having a cell phone out, which at this point is a very difficult battle, with the cell phone battle. But and the last part, though, I think is very undervalued is the motivation. We really, really promote guys that do a good job in the classroom for themselves. Like everyone's on a different standard as far as that goes. Like if we have a qualifier who's a really smart kid and he could easily be getting a 3.9 or a 3.85 GPA and the kid's sitting at 3.3, we're going to bust his butt a little bit and try to motivate him to be better. But if you've got a kid who's a 2.1 GPA kid out of high school and non-qualifying, really poor student, all of a sudden he's, hitting that 3.0 mark. We're celebrating like we just won the conference championship. And, that motivation aspect, I'll tell you, kids it's amazing for them because a lot of these kids have never had this type of success in the classroom before and definitely have never had it celebrated before. And so to motivate with the celebration, the positive reinforcement, but also kind of from a competitive stage. Like I'm a 90s guy, I'm a Jordan guy. So I'm really competitive in everything I do, which is why I don't play video games, which is why I don't do a lot of things that
Me neither.
Yeah. I get too competitive. I don't like losing and probably not very good at video games anymore. But so we really preach the competitiveness and we have competitive guys on the roster. So we actually, kind of push that envelope even with academics. So if we've got a couple of point guards and they're all, very similar with their academic situation, we're pushing to see who's going to, win that academic battle each semester. And the guys take pride in that. And so between the motivation, the positive reinforcement, obviously the structure, and in the competitiveness standpoint, our guys have done a really good job academically. And this is a tough academic JUCO. because we're a feeder into not just the Florida state college systems, with University of Florida and Florida State, but also in our town is Florida Tech, which is a high level engineering school, NCAA Division II school. So for a junior college, I've been at I've been at one other and know a bunch of others. We're a pretty good academic junior college, and so for our guys to excel the way they have here, I've got a lot of pride in that.
It's great. And I think too often people think of, JUCO route as like non-academic kids, but that's not true. Kids are coming to your place for a lot of different reasons. And that's also a diversity of player from background to education to everything else that you're dealing with. So that's got to be a big part of it. And each player being very individual in terms of these end of year meetings is important for you. So you talked about academics. What's the next step?
The next step is just kind of an umbrella part. We just want to talk about what are their thoughts and goals in general for next year, because we are dealing with, especially now with everyone's free COVID year, a year ago, we're dealing with we're dealing with a lot of different situations. We're dealing with, if they're a graduate who has no more eligibility here, generally, what are they thinking about for next year? If it's a kid who's graduated but has an extra year because of the COVID year, are they feeling like they need to move on, mentally, athletically, emotionally, or do they feel like coming back? If it's a kid who's a freshman that didn't play a whole lot, is it a kid that is looking to maybe go somewhere else he can play more? Is he looking to come back? And shockingly enough, they almost always say come back, even the ones that don't play a lot, which again, I'm happy for because I'm very loyal to our guys. But so we just kind of talk. The second thing is just we need to kind of figure out where the next part of the conversation will go. So we really just talk about, their overall goals. And I always leave it on them to speak first because I want to listen. And, I'm a Shulman and so my parents will be the first to remind me that we don't always listen in my family as well as we need to. So that is something I think that as a coach, listening is so incredibly important and not just speaking, because us coaches, Chris, man, we love to talk. I can talk as well as any of them, but, to be able to sit and really listen to our guys. So the whole second part of that is really focused just on listening to those guys and, and then kind of go from there onto the next stages.
In terms of helping them understand their goals, their next levels, whatever that may be, where are you getting that advice? I mean, obviously your experience is tremendous, but is a lot of it determined just by the coaches that are recruiting them? So that puts it more in perspective than anything you could say in terms of that, because that's what speaks, right? The offers.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% right on that. I still think the very first stage is listening to see what their goals are. And then the second part of it is what you were saying with where they truly are with the recruitment, et cetera. And then that leads to the third thing, which is, I believe you've got to be very, very, you need to be kind, but you need to be very, very candid and clear. And so our guys, I tell our guys, even in the recruiting process, I'm always going to be honest with them. I'm always going to be very, very clear, very candid with them. They're not always going to like what I have to say, but I'm always going to be honest with them. And I hope they respect me for that. And so that is a major theme in our meetings. I mean, some of our kids that decided to come back this year, which again, I'm very glad they decided to come back, but I was very honest with a couple of kids and say, listen, you're not going to play at all next year. I said, well, Coach, I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to earn these minutes. I said, I appreciate that. And I hope you do work hard, but you're not going to play. You're just not. And I don't want to lead you on, blah, 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 blah. And, but you've got to be very, 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 very candid and honest. And you can say it in a nice way. You can say it in a caring way, because these are other human beings. These are, very, young guys that do have all kinds of emotional stuff going on, especially with social media. So you can be kind about it, but I think you need to be very, very clear and very, very precise.
So academics, goals, obviously for next year. What's the third thing that you get into with these end of year meetings?
So the third thing goes into, we start kind of peeling off onto third and fourth is kind of a peel off. It is if a guy is moving on. And generally that's again, it used to be a lot clearer before the COVID year. It was you graduate, which means you have to move on, or you didn't graduate. But now we have all the, so we have some guys with a little bit more leeway. But generally, so the third part is the guys are moving on. And then we start discussing, again, what more specifically, where is their goals and where is reality, and where can we have those two align? If I have a kid that wants to go play at Duke and he averaged 1 point a game for me, well, the reality doesn't quite align with with their goals are. But so we get into a whole lot of details on that. And, I'm very blessed, Chris, even though I'm still call myself very, very young, but this is my 25th year coaching. Coached AAU for 10 years when I was very young, started my program from scratch in high school, then coached 3 years as an assistant coach at East Mississippi, and now 12 years as a head coach at Eastern Florida. And so for every one of those years, because of the levels I've been at, we have been helping guys move on to the next level. And so there is no crystal ball. There is no, perfect way I can help our guys, but, 25 years of experience of helping guys move on to the next level. And we've been blessed to have a whole lot of guys at every spot that I've been at move on. I feel like I do have some good advice to at least help those guys. And we get very detailed. And again, it all centers around listening to what they want and being very clear about the reality that we are in as well. And then we, get very detailed from that to try to help them figure out, what the next stages are. I also want to make sure I ask a lot of questions in that, because I want them to ask questions to me in that, because a lot of these guys, even though we have a lot of meetings, we talk a lot throughout the year, there's still a lot of things they don't know about the recruiting process. They don't always understand about official visits or the difference between official or unofficial. They don't always understand, how many visits you can take. They don't understand some of the recruiting periods, the signing day, et cetera. And so in addition to that, junior college is unique, to different levels as far as when the recruitment happens. In September, for example, when coaches can come out on the road September 9th, schools are recruiting our guys like crazy, and almost gives them kind of a false sense because they're recruiting not really ready to take a lot of guys, but they don't really have anything else to do because it's September. They haven't started their practices. And so recruiting is crazy in September. It continues in October. Once everyone's season starts in November, obviously it dies down for a long time. And then it doesn't start really back up until kind of mid to late February, when team seasons are about to be done at the Division I level and they start getting back into it. But those are things we have to address with our guys because, they're young guys and they start, and again, comparisons to the thief of joy. They see on Twitter who's getting offers. They see this. They don't see the thousands of kids that are not getting offers, that are being recruited, but not getting offers or going through the same struggles they are. They see the 5 or 6 kids on, that are tweeting out these offers and these graphics with 100 lists. And they're like, well, that's not me. So I'm, lesser than, or I'm messing up, or what's going on. And so it's a really, really detailed conversation at that point for the guys that are moving on.
A few things to unpack there. Number one is you mentioned this a few times, that you want them to be able to ask questions. And that's true. And this is, by the way, these are all great guidelines for coaches, whether they coach AAU, they coach high school, they coach college. There's end of year meetings that are so important. And I love that you're sharing this. But how do you create this platform for them to be able to be comfortable to ask questions? Because we know that as coaches, we go, hey, do you have any questions? And generally that doesn't lead to any questions, does it?
Never. And that's, I appreciate you bringing that back up, Chris, but I cannot emphasize it enough. The work is all done way before these meetings. The work is all done in the relationships. It's all done in creating an environment where guys do feel comfortable. Because, and even when you think that you've created that environment, you still have not, by the way. You still have more work to do. And, that's the biggest thing. And, again, it's a daily battle for that, because if I think that our guys have a good enough relationship, if I think they're going to be open enough, and I stop cultivating that relationship, then I'm telling you, I'm dropping the ball. I've learned it the hard way. I've learned it. I assumed, again, I go back to 14, 15, and we won 29 games. And we were on top of the world. We were number 4 in the country and made it to national tournament. I didn't know at the time that I wasn't cultivating relationships. Again, I had to figure it out the hard way. I had to figure it out later. So to get guys to open up, they have to feel truly, truly comfortable. And part of it is, I'm not sure the best way to phrase it, but you can't have too many negative reactions, even if you disagree with the player. Obviously, everything's got to be respectful, in any type of encounter, because it is still player coach. It's not just buddy. But if you set a precedent of giving a negative reaction, even if it's your own coach's body language is a negative reaction to a player when he makes comments throughout the year or comes into your office, tell you what, they're going to go back into a shell. They're not going to want to. They're not going to feel comfortable speaking and really opening up, or, they're going to go back into the coach speak and telling you what you want to hear. And, everything's good, coach, this and that. And so you've got to make them feel very, very comfortable that they can say whatever they want and you're not going to snap their head off. So, and again, it's a daily deal on there. So I appreciate you bringing it up. That's so important.
It's so important. And thank you for highlighting some of those things. And I'm also curious, in this end of year meeting process, there's this concept of 360 feedback, which is that you're getting feedback from people beyond just you. And, it's anonymous, it's not anonymous. That's up to people, but obviously assistant coaches, athletic directors, sport administrators, even different coaches in your league or different people like that. I'm just curious if you do anything similar in terms of getting other feedback for the players, which I imagine is so important as well.
Absolutely. And I do. And I also have to do a better job of that. So both things can be true on there. And I'm a big believer in feedback in general. I get feedback from myself, from my program, from my players, from every source I possibly can. And that doesn't mean everything's weighted the exact same, but I think all feedback is valuable, and it's up to you as a coach to sort through that and figure out what makes sense, what sticks, what can be helpful. And you could get hours and hours of feedback in for yourself or for the players or the program. And a lot of it could not be helpful. And all it takes is one nugget of truth, one thing that just says, oh, wow, that's incredible. That could be the difference in taking your program to the next level. And so I think the feedback is just huge. And you're right, for our guys specifically, I mean, there's so much feedback we can get, but it starts with the Division I and Division II coaches. It's different scouts or different junior college scouts or recruiting services. It's, as you say, coaches in our league. And we have, it used to be in person, now it's on Zoom. We have an end of year coaches meeting as well within our conference, where we do our all conference voting and all those type of things. And so there's already some inherent, value of feedback there. And you get to, you get a new opinion, that if you haven't spoken to those coaches enough during the year because you're competitive, by the end of the year, you get a new opinion on some of your guys. Oh, well, it's very interesting. So we try to give some of that back to our guys, but kind of roll it all up into one whenever we're kind of giving them a very clear, picture of where they're at.
Yeah, good stuff. Good to hear. And, we talked about 3 of those things. I think we're on to the 4th now.
Yeah. So then that goes to the other side of things, the guys that are coming back. And so again, it starts with me asking them their thoughts and goals and questions. And so we really get into, okay, you're coming back. Fantastic. All right. Where do you want to be next year? All right. Fast forward just a little bit. It's October 1st, first practice. It's November 1st, first game. What is your goal 6-7 months from now? Where do you want to be? And then, we have a little back and forth. Again, if that becomes, walk on saying, well, I want to go and play and start, then I can be very honest with them and not give false hope. But anyway, we kind of find, whatever kind of middle ground it is. And so then I'm huge into the micro. I'm huge into the details. And so we kind of work backwards more and more and more into as much detail as we can. And one other thing, I'm huge into taking notes. And so I try to put that onto our players as well. And so in these meetings, I hope that our players are taking notes. I'm taking notes the entire time during these meetings as well. I just think it's an incredible thing to, even if you don't always go back over the notes you take, or even if our players don't go back over, I think there's a direct correlation between putting on paper in addition to speaking it that resonates more in a human being's brain. And so we're both taking notes, especially, hopefully our players are, even if it's the notepad on their phone. But we'll go over, again, a lot of, minutia details on what I believe it will take for them to reach their, personal and team goals for next year. And I also tell them our meetings are generally about an hour. Sometimes they can go less, sometimes more, depending on who it is. But a lot of the guys, I tell them, obviously, we're going to have a lot of follow-up meetings as well. It's if you do a morning hour and you have 18 guys, including walk-ons like we do, it's just going to be a really, really, really long week if you do it more than that. But there's a lot of guys you're going to have follow-ups with, whether it's a FaceTime, a phone call, another meeting in the office, going to their dorms or apartments, et cetera. But and especially with the guys, with both, because the recruiting part for the guys who are leaving is ever changing. The guys that are coming back, there's just so much to build on and so much to continue to sort through when we're trying to make that plan for our guys. Because as a coach, one of the easiest things to do, which is one of the biggest mistakes, is you take goals, you take things you want to accomplish, and you just basically, that's where it stops. You say, I want to win a conference championship. Okay, great. Everyone wants to win a championship. So how do you work backward into enough detail to actually accomplish it? Again, I know it's a little bit cliche word now, which is unfortunate to me, but I'm a huge process guy. And I do believe there are some coaches that are truly in the process. And then there's a whole lot of just, it's the cliche word now to, throw out there, but we're a very process oriented group. I'm a big believer in the process. So we work backwards to as much detail as we possibly can to put together a plan, because without the details of a plan, how are you going to ever reach the larger umbrella goal that you set forth? So we talk as many details as we can in that amount of time. And then we obviously, say that we're going to meet again here soon and go over those, and then, continue to put together that plan for the spring, then for the summer, for the fall, et cetera, so that they can improve.
And this is awesome. And most of it so far has really been, although we're focusing on big picture, whether they're returning or not, academics, all those things that lead them down the correct path. I mean, you haven't got into the specific basketball stuff that they need to improve or what they need to improve yet. And I got to imagine this is the fifth step, isn't it?
So the fifth step is interesting. So the fourth step was a little bit more about the individual basketball stuff. By the end of the fifth step, to me, is something that you've got to have a little bit of thick skin as a coach, but again, it's about feedback. Mm-hmm. So the fifth step, to me, I want to talk to, it's a little bit of reminiscing, but it's more evaluating and getting feedback from our guys. I want to hear their honest opinion on certain things in our program in this past year, some things that they thought went really well. Again, it could be umbrella, it could be basketball, it could be a set play we ran, it could be anything. But I want to listen again. I want their honest opinions. And again, I think we have a good enough relationship with our guys that most of them will be honest. And Chris, I'll be honest with you, there were some things that were said at those meetings, respectfully, of course, that I just absolutely did not agree with. And that's okay. And I didn't let those guys know that, because I wanted their opinions to be valued. But it was really interesting. I got some really, really, really interesting feedback from our guys on that fifth step, and some stuff that I might not have known, other stuff I might not agree on, but it's just, it's something that can help me, again, look in the mirror as we try to grow and move this program forward. And I think that's such a valuable step, as long as guys feel comfortable being open and honest about everything. As long as they'll feel open and honest about it, you can get some really interesting information. Because one thing we always say, and I don't love that this is true, but unfortunately it's true, and I learned this from my boss: perception is reality. And when you're talking to young guys, when you're talking to your players, I grew up just believing reality is reality. Okay, whatever's true is true. But unfortunately, what the perception of your players, what they believe on a daily basis, unfortunately, that is their reality. And so if you're only trying to, if you're just butting heads with them, like, this is my reality, this is your reality, you're not going to ever be on the same page. And so you have to put yourself in their shoes. And this is part of putting yourself in their shoes, really hearing what they think. So if I have a player that says some stuff that I don't think is reality, I don't think is true, well, guess what? That's their reality. So that means that I need to do a better job in that aspect of changing their perception, changing their reality a little bit. And so at the end of the day, it falls on my feet. It doesn't fall on their feet. It falls on my feet.
Well, and that's great that you go through that introspection and you get that feedback back, which is obviously necessary for your improvement. I'm also curious, because I always found with some of those things, it's like, you throw out your top scores, you throw out your bottom scores. In the middle is where you really need to improve, because as we know, some people overrate you. Some players obviously underrate you based on their personal experience and nothing to do with actually how you did things. It didn't work out for them. So is that something that you focus on, is those areas from maybe that middle area?
Yeah, it's very, very, because you're 100% right on that, but it's very interesting in our program. And it's just, again, the way we do things, and maybe it's everywhere, maybe this is just unique to us. It is all over the place. I can't even say it's the middle with us. It is, again, this goes back to 2014, 15. my best player in 14-15, who was a high major 6'10" big, who was fantastic, who was All-American, he was the one that had a much different opinion of me and the way I handled some things than anyone on the roster. And it shocked me, but it just reminded me again about, well, I'm not going to digress again, but it reminded me about building relationships and not just taking for granted. And so long story short, I'm hard on our guys. All right. But I do it because I believe in tough love. I believe it makes tougher players. I think it prepares them for the real world. And I think it helps them win games. But when you have love behind that, then you can do that. And, you know, and again, I learned from even my best player in 14-15, he didn't feel enough love. And so then you can't be as tough on guys. And so sometimes it's your best player. Sometimes it's in the middle. Sometimes it's your lowest guy. But I'll tell you what, like if you asked our lowest players this year, I think they love me as much as anybody. And I'm happy about that because I feel like this year I did a pretty dang good job accomplishing our number one goal, which is to make sure 1 through 18 all felt a great relationship with myself, all felt the love for me, et cetera. And so, and again, yet this year, and hey, one of our best players was the guy by the last 3 weeks of the year that I had to work on a relationship more than anybody. And it was probably our third best player. And, you know, but again, we worked through that, and I thought we were playing our best ball at the end of the year. And you know, it's because as a coach, I think you have to learn from mistakes. I think we learned from mistakes, and so now I could, honest to goodness, say by the time the year ended, I'd say 18 for 18. We felt pretty good about everything.
That's why we're all good coaches. We make a lot of mistakes. There's no question.
A lot of mistakes.
Yeah. Me too. Still, curious with that. You've talked about this a few times. So normalizing the experience or the future possibilities for them. And especially in that sense that you said already, like they all come in with a certain expectation, but really, again, not going Division I isn't the end of your experience, right? And players can have great experiences with, and I'm not even talking specifically with different levels. As you said, some of your players decide to not play more basketball and focus on their academics. And all of those things are normal and can lead to a great life. And I'm thinking that's a big part of what you're talking to them about.
Absolutely, because there's so much more. And listen, I am obsessed with basketball. I've loved it my entire life. I'm obsessed. But at the end of the day, there is a lot more to life than just basketball. And there's going to be a whole life after your playing career is over. And so we do talk about that. And funny you say that. We actually had 19 on our roster. We had a 6'9" walk-on who I loved. He was a homeschool kid. He'd been out of school for a few years and was getting better as a basketball player. And he left it at Christmas time to take a very lucrative construction job. And I was just so fired up for him. And we brought him back for our net cutting ceremony. He helped cut down some of the nets. You know, he hadn't been with us since December. But, you know, that's a success story, Chris. You know, that's a success. The fact that, okay, he didn't go Division I. He didn't go Division II. He's happy. He's got a job he wants. He, you know, figured out, and we met and we talked about it over the break. And he asked my advice. And, you know, my advice, you know, probably, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's, you know, more than it should. I do believe in following your heart and following your gut. You know, sometimes those can, you know, mislead you, and sometimes your head's the one that should be doing the talking, but that's just not how I, you know, coach, or that's not how I lead my life. And so I told him the same thing. And, you know, and at the end of the day, he felt like his heart was, he always wanted to be in construction, and it was a good job. And, you know, he probably was realistic. No, he wasn't going to make a career playing, you know, basketball after college. And to be in construction, he didn't need a college degree. And so I'm really happy for him. And I think he made a great decision for him. So you're right. There's a lot more to it than just Division I or Division II, or, you know, Canadian schools or NAIA or Division III.
Well, and I know, you know, you're beyond that point, but as young coaches, one of the hard things is ego, right? Like whether you run AAU, you run, it's, well, my player went to this level, and that perspective that you just shared is really what it's all about. Because whether they go Division I or not, you're going to be proud of them, as long as, again, they're moving forward in their life in a positive way, and that's ultimately our responsibility. So I'm so glad you shared that, and you've mentioned relationships so many times here, and I know we have a shared mentor in Dave Smart. So because when I've spent time with Dave, I'd say, I mean, the technical tactical is brilliant, but the thing that I've taken away so much is how he manages relationships. And I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast, but this concept that I've labeled on behalf of Dave as aftercare. It's that you can coach them hard and you can challenge them to be better, but there has to be this aftercare that takes place in some form. That was a huge takeaway from me for Dave. I'm curious, what are some of your takeaways from Dave?
Well, the first takeaway is just the result-based part, which is, Chris, I think he's the best coach in North America. He might be the best coach in the world. I think
he does not have offers for jobs from an assistant level to a head coaching level. It's just, I don't know what's going on.
And he and I have talked about that a lot. And It is insanity. It is insanity. But at the end of the day, as far as that goes, and he and I talked about this as well, unfortunately, a lot of athletic directors don't truly want to win. They just want to win the press conference. And I guess, the Dave Smart name doesn't win the press conference. But if you want to win championships at any level, he is incredible. And I can't say enough, superlatives about how amazing Dave Smart is as a coach. And so, we were talking a little bit about it before, but it was all the way back in 2012. It was December 2012. And I had never in my life heard of Carleton University, knew nothing about it. Earlier that year, we played, I can't remember what it was. We played a small Canadian college that had just come down to Florida during it was the year before, had come down here. And they weren't a big college, and we beat them really, really, really badly. And so I had no concept at all of, CIS or any of the Canadian, youth sports or anything, no concept. And so I see that two teams in our league, Palm Beach, who was top 5 in the country at the time, they were a big rival, or top 10 in the country. And then Broward, who is another, conference rival. And I see that they're playing Carleton, this following year in December 2012. And so my initial thought is, oh man, they're playing another Canadian school. Like, what is this? Like they're going to go win by 50 points just like we did. And so I drive down, the games were at Broward, and I drive down to Broward, and I'm going to go scout both teams. And, I stayed for both games, 2 days in a row. It was just watching literal brilliance. It was watching poetry. It was watching this. It was like it was an epiphany. I just couldn't, it was everything all in one. I couldn't believe how amazing his teams were, how well coached they were, how his players seemed to always make the right decision no matter what. And this is after I even skipped a step. When I'm watching them in warmups and watch them compared to Palm Beach, and Palm Beach has 6'11" high major. They got a couple 6'8" long athletic wings. And Carleton at the time, Scrub Brothers, I think were second year guys at the time. And watching Carleton in warmups with nobody over 6'7", and they just didn't look the part. I'm like, man, Palm Beach is going to just win this thing bad. And sure enough, the Palm Beach game, they beat Palm Beach by like 20 points, maybe it's 18. And, Palm Beach goes top 5 in the country, phenomenal. The next day they beat Broward by like 48. It was unbelievable. And so ever since then, I was on a mission to get to know Dave Smart. And so it took a few years. His inner circle is very, very, small. It
only took a few years, Coach.
I was very lucky that it only did. And I tried,
good for you. Perseverance is required.
Oh, yes. Tried to get to know him, through emails. I'd gotten his phone number from a mutual friend down at Broward. Trying to email his assistant coaches. And I was trying to, be persistent. And I got invited up by Dave to Ottawa and spend some time up there. And it was amazing. I think I was up there for 6 days, and just unbelievable how welcoming he was and his staff to, get into the inner workings a little bit and watch them at practice and get to know Dave, get to know Manny was one of the assistant coaches, I think, at the time. And it was just, it was unbelievable. And so ever since I've kept in touch with, Dave Smart, I would definitely call him just an incredible influence on me. I probably have made absolutely zero impact on him, but it's just, I can't say enough. I watch, I know he's not actually coaching Carleton anymore right now, but I've watched probably 300 Carleton games from Synergy and over the past, couple of years. And it's just he's just he's a genius is what he is. He's a literal genius. And so a lot of what we do has some influence from Carlton, from Dave Smart.
So for coaches that aren't sure about Dave, davesmartbasketball.com, go there. But as you said, watching the games on Synergy, I mean, I've coached against them. I coach with them. So I've had that experience. But, let us know, maybe technically, tactically, what are the things that stand out from you that you've been able to apply to your program? Some of the specific things, maybe technically, tactically.
Okay, so the number one thing, and again, I hate calling them secrets, because they're not secrets, because everything's on Synergy now, but I went up there trying to learn more about offense, because that's what I saw was just how just beautiful his offense was, how just insanely efficient his offense was, et cetera. And you know what? And we were already a pretty decent defensive team, but what I learned more than anything was a lot of his defensive stuff. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that we've applied more than anything else. For lack of better terms, a force weak defense. I always call it a common sense defense, because when I was never a great player, but when I played, I always believed in taking away the other team's strengths, and so if someone didn't go left as well as it went right, then you know what, let's not let them go right. And if someone, blah, 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 shoots it better, drives better, whatever. And so watching his force weak defense and watching just how much it was emphasized on a daily basis, not a forced sideline, not a forced middle, just literally scouting report based, take away what a player does well and force him to what he doesn't do as well. And the second part of that was his concept of taking away their passing. And, I've always thought about it, even when I played, it was, hey, take away their ability. Where do they drive better? Where do they handle the ball better? Or where do they shoot better? But his was taking players off of on time, on target, on passes, and taking away and making teams a bad passing team. And I just thought it was just brilliant. It's like I'm sitting here, in Ottawa, just on the sideline, trying not to make a noise, because I don't want to disrupt practice. And I'm just like, I think I had like 50 something pages of notes for my 6 days there. And it was the beauty in his simplicity. I think that's one of the things that makes him so great. He doesn't run 5 million set plays. It's just, he is great at what he does, and the beauty in his simplicity. And it is just, it revolutionized us. And it really did. And, we had won a lot of games, and we had just won our first conference championship by the time that I go up there. And, we were already trending upward, but needing that extra little step from my coaching journey, learning from such a brilliant guy. It is no coincidence that very shortly after that, we go to 5 straight trips to the national tournament. And, I can really thank, Coach Dave Smart for a lot of that.
I'm so glad you had that experience. And obviously there's great mentors, and as you find one that can help you and aligns with you. And I know with the Dave Smart piece, that's the other thing. And again, he doesn't like some of these terms and labels like force weak, whatever it is, because for him, it's just all, as you said, logical. It's just, we attack with strengths, or we attack weaknesses, and that's it. Whether it's on offense or defense, it's both of those things. And as you said, it is simplicity and spacing and decisions. And as you said, attack matchups. Like, we're going to figure out the right matchup to attack and then force them to react. And it's really great stuff. And I'm so happy you had that influence and it shared with you. Was there anything from just the perspective of the psychology? Because I think the brilliance of Dave is obviously the psychology that you see in practice. And I think some people leave kind of with this, oh, he's so hard on his players, he's so mean. And he's not a yeller per se, but it's very direct communication, isn't it? But can you, there's some takeaways from that you've been able to apply to your program as well?
He's so great at that. And he's so good at it. I guess it's going to sound very almost counterintuitive, but I'd say one of the biggest takeaways was, no matter how much you learn from these great coaches like Dave Smart, you can't be Dave Smart. You can't be these great coaches. And that was almost an overreaction that I had when I first got back. And again, the psychology aspect, just the way he talked to his guys, the way that his attention to detail, the way he saw the game. I almost tried to implement too much of it right away, because again, I'm just watching Picasso. And so I'm wanting to paint like Picasso. And it did take about a year for me to figure out you can't paint like Picasso. You can take a couple of things that you learned, a couple of things that really resonate, a couple of things that go in with your own personality. But I think that's such an important thing, again, for all young coaches out there. learn from those that know more than you, but don't try to be those, because you can't. That you can't replicate that type of greatness. And so I know that's a little bit more of a tangent from what you're saying, but he was just so incredible. There's no way I could, handle things the way he handled things, because he's incredible. I mean, he's the absolute best at that. So you just learn from it. You try to figure out how you can, use it with your own personality, with your own teams, with your own system. And then that's the right mix.
You said a tangent, but that was the most important tangent you could share. Thank you, Coach. That is the most important thing, for sure, to find yourself within these other experiences that you have. And it's not always easy, because sometimes you do imitate, and that's okay at first, but you have to remember to find yourself. And that is the challenge. And you've obviously done such a tremendous job doing that. And it shows, Coach, with the success you've had, the longevity you've had, the different levels that you've coached at, all that. I mean, you've found yourself, and it's just absolutely brilliant. I cannot thank you enough for sharing the game with us.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on. I mean, this was a real pleasure on my part.